Welcome to Macrocode. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. So today we are going to create a simple ASP.NET Core Web API, connect it to the database, and at the end of this video, we are going to publish our project to IIS and actually show you the whole process. So as you can see, we've just opened our Visual Studio 2022. So we are going to create a simple Web API. So I'll just start by creating a new project. So I'll click on create a new project. Then here, I'm going to choose the Web API template. So I'll just search. So, and if you search, you'll notice that you have a project template for creating a RESTful web API using ASP.NET Core controllers or minimal APIs. So I'll just click on that. Then if I just click next, then it will actually give me an option to choose where I'll be storing my project. So as you can see, this is the location. So you can actually choose the different locations on how you want to store your project. Then on the project name, I'm going to give it a simple project name for students. So I'll call it Student Management Web API, Student Management API. So I'll just call it Student Management API. Then if I click next, then we are able to see that we need to choose the framework. So I'm going to use ASP.NET Core. That is ASP.NET Core .NET8.0, which is actually on long-term support. So this is the framework that we are going to use. Then authentication type, you can just choose none. Then configure for HTTPS, you can tick that. Then enable Open API support, and you can use controllers. So if we just click create, then our project will be created. So this project will be having a simple weather forecast details, which will be able to see how we can actually create our own project and actually filter and even pull some data related to students. So as you can see, our project has been created. There we go. And on this particular project, you have some information on weather forecast. So as you can see here, we have the weather forecast details. So let's just open the weather forecast class. So this is the weather forecast class, and it has some properties. Then if you go to program.cs, we have also some of the items here. We are using Swagger, and also this is already enabled in the project by default. Then we have the app settings. This is where we'll be having our connection to the database. So just stay tuned and you'll be able to see how we are connecting this to the database. Then we have the controllers. We have the weather forecast controllers. So if we just launch this particular project, you'll be able to see a simple weather forecast details that it is part of this project that we've just created. So we have not added anything, but you're able to pull some weather forecast details. As you can see, we have the data here, the summaries, and this is the data that you are going to pull. So if you're new to this channel and you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing, as we are going to walk you through how to create a simple ASP.NET Core Web API. And we are going to demonstrate this using students' data. So we are going to connect this to the database and also do some items related to APIs like filtering and even pagination. So as you can see, we have our students management API, and we have one get method. So if we try here, if we click try and execute, it will actually give us some data related to weather forecast. You see, we have the date, the summary, and all this information here. So what I want us to do is I want us to now start creating our own controller and even the models. So let's just create a folder. So we are going to create a folder called models. So just create a folder called models. Then on the models folder, we are going to create a class, a model for our student. So let's create two models. So I want us to create two models. So we are going to call this student. Then on this student, I want to have, so let's just zoom so that you're able to see. So as you can see, this is now our student model. So we can do public. So we can do public int ID. Then we can have student first name. So we can have here string. So this will be string. Then we can do here first name. Then you can also do something else here, string, and you can do middle name. Then you can also do here string. So here we'll do another string, and you can have last name. So then what other thing can we do? We can have student email. So here I'll just do also string, and I can have this email address. So I don't want us to have more of the information, so we can just do simple. So here we can do date of birth, so I'll just do date time. Then here we can have here date of birth. What other things? So we can also do telephone number. So you can do here, it actually added for us. So you can see it has added for us. So you can just tap and it will give us the, so you can, if you want, you can, so you don't want an email, we have an email address. So let's just tap and change it. So we can actually put in, so we have the first name, middle name, last name. We can have here address. So let's add another class. So I'm going to add another class called courses. So I'll just choose here class, then we'll call this course. So if we just press enter, then we'll have our course class. Then you can also do public int. Then you can do here a name and the description. So we can add another thing here called course code. So here I'll just do string, then I'll have here code. So that will be my course code. Then another thing is we might want to know the person who created and when it was created. So I'll just create another class here called user activity. So this user activity, instead of repeating those properties, I'll just create here public. I'll say a string created on, and you can do here, so created on. So this should be created by, let's just create created by, and you can do here also public string created on. So these two properties, you can actually include them on our classes like student. Instead of repeating it, you can just inherit. So you'll have that. Then you can also have it on our course. So I'll just do this one. So we'll have those two properties. So the next thing that we need to do now, we've created our models. So what we need to do is we can actually create now our application DB context, which will act as a connection to our database. So I'll just click here, then you can see here database connection. So that is a folder. Then here I'm going to create something called another class called application. So you can call it application DB context. Application DB context. So on our application DB context, you can see here. So instead of, after we've done that, I want us to install some NuGet packages. So right click on our project, then manage NuGet packages. So to use our application DB context, I want us to install some items. So here we are going to install SQL Server NuGets. So let's just browse. So here, just type in SQL. So we have this Microsoft Data SQL Client, and we have Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. So this is what we need. So install that. So our NuGet is installing. So accept. Then we also have, so if that is done, you can also choose tools. So we need another framework. So this is Entity Framework Core tools. Install that as well. So accept. Then we need also just to install entity framework. So we are going to do entity framework. So this is it. So entity framework core. So we need entity framework. Sorry, I'll just do entity framework. So I'll just do that. So then we will be able to see here we have Microsoft.entity framework, and you can see the number of downloads 1.14 billion. So I'll just install that. So I'll install that, accept. And also I can also install another one here called, let me just choose it. It's called design. So I'll just install that. So once I've installed these NuGet packages, the next thing that I want us to do is we need to have on our application DB context, I want us to do something. So here on our identity application DB context, I want us to inherit identity DB context. So if we do that, we'll actually inherit something from our EFCore. So you can see we need to install. So you can actually install this latest package. Install package Microsoft SP.NET Core Identity EF Entity Framework Core. So if you click it, just click find and install the latest package. So it will actually install this particular package, Microsoft.sp.NET Core Identity.Entity Framework Core. But do you need actually that? We can actually use here DB context. So if we just do DB context, you can do that. So you can see you can use identity or you can use DB context. So let's just use DB context. So we can actually remove. So let's just remove that particular package. So I usually don't like to have packages that I don't use. So if we remove that, then we should be good to go. So you can see we now have, so you can use identity DB context or you can just use DB context. So next thing is I want us to have our constructor. So if I just do this CTO, if you just type in CTOR and tap, it will actually give you the constructor. But now on our constructor, I want us to do here DB context options. So you see DB context options, then you can do this and have here our application DB context. So if I just zoom in a bit, then here we can do options. Then outside here we can just do base options. So that is how we have, so we can just do away with this. So we can just do away with this. So this is how our DB context looks like. So we have our application DB context options, our application DB context, then options, then base options. So we've now created our application DB context. The next thing is to actually include it on our program.cs class. So to include it, I want us to do something here. So I'll just do builder.services.add DB context. You see, then we need to include our application DB context. Then here I'll just do options. So I'll just call these options. Then I'll do that. Then I'm going to open bracket. Then here I'll just do options. Then dot use. So I'll call these options. So I'll call options dot use SQL server. So if we do that, so this should be use SQL server. So I need to import something here. So you see, using entity framework core. So if we import that, then here I'll call this builder dot configuration dot get connection string. So you see dot get connection string. Then our connection string, we are going to have these as default connection. So let me zoom in a bit. So I'm going to minimize this. So that is default connection. So then if we close that, then we've just added our, so we need to add another closing. So if we do that, and we can close this here. So you see we have builder.services.add DB context, application DB context options, then options use SQL server build, then we have our default connection. So our default connection is actually what we need to add it on our. So here, if we just do here connection string, then if we do that, it will actually give us, so you can do default connection. and that is it. So this is our default connection. So you need to create it on our app settings.json. So let's just confirm that the name is okay. So you can actually repaste here so that you have the correct name. So on our app settings.json, so here we have something. We should actually define SQL. So here we need SQL server. So here we need actually server. So we say server, and we need to provide the name of the server. So here, if you just click on connection, this is my name of the server name. We need to paste it here. So if I just paste it there, then also we need the database. So I'll just do database. So database, then I'll just provide the name of the database. So we need to create our database. So here I'll just connect. Then if we go to databases, I'll be creating student API. So I'll just call this student API. So let's just click. Then we call this student API. So that will be our database. So if we click that, then we copy the name of our student API, go back to our setting, then comma. So if you are using, so here on the separation is actually semicolon, do semicolon. Then if you are using maybe a server that needs username and password, so you can actually define the user ID and the passwords. But for me, I'm using my local machine, so I don't have any connection. So now I'll just leave it as it is. Then I can have trust server certificate. So trust server certificate. So I'll just do here, this is true. So then we can have also multiple. So I'll just do multiple active result sets. So multiple active result set. I'll just also do here true. So we have trust server certificate, multiple active result set. So here we have a server engineer, then database, you have the student API, then you have trust server certificate. So these ones should be equals to database equals to, then student API, trust server certificate, multiple active result sets. Then that is our connection. So we have our connections already defined. We have these particular details. So the next thing that we need to do is to add our tables. So here we are going to add our student tables down here. So I'll just do public db set. So I'll call db set. Then I'll have my student model. Then I'll have my table called students. So the next thing is I need also to define our courses table. So I'll copy that, and here I'll say course. So this is course. Then here I'll have courses. So that will be my table. But now we need to link something. I don't think we had done some linking on a student. So the student, we need to define the courses that the student has. So here we should actually say student. So every student has a course. So on the course, so we can say here public, we say int. So we'll just do here int. Then we can say course ID. Then I'll do that. Then you can say here public string. You can say here co. So this should be course. So these are foreign key. So introducing here course, then these will be course. So since we have these now, we can now generate our migrations. So we've added our tables and the students and the application DB context. We have the student, then the courses. So the next thing we need to do is to go to tools, then NuGet Package Manager Console. So that is NuGet Package Manager Console. Then we add migration. So if we just say add migration, then you can say student details. So this is the name of our migration. So if you press enter, we're expecting to have our migration file generated with the students details. So this will actually create commands on what it will do to our database. It will need to create tables for students and even the courses. So if you're new to this channel and you're following this video, remember to subscribe, like our video, and you can always share. So we notice 90% of you guys are watching our videos and you've not subscribed. So if you're one of them, please consider subscribing. So you can see our migration file has been generated, and you'll notice that there is a folder called migrations that has been created. So in this migration folder, we have the courses table. So you see, this is the commands. It will create a table called courses with ID, code, the name, description, created by, and created on. Then you also have the students. We have the ID, first name, middle name, last name, email address, birth, phone number, address, course ID, course by, and even created on. So these will be the details. So to effect these changes to our database, we need to run another command. But we need to see if you just create migrations, are our tables already on our database? You'll notice that we don't have any tables. So you can see here, we don't have any tables. So to add those tables, we need to do tools, NuGet package manager console again, and here we can say update database. So if you press update database, then our tables will be created. So if there is no any error, we are expecting to have our tables created, and we should now start creating our endpoints. So let's just wait and see. In the meantime, if you are new to this channel, consider subscribing, and you feel you want to appreciate our work, you can always buy us coffee using the link down below. And you can also claim this source code, which will be on our link down below. So you can access this particular simple project, or now you can create the web API using ASP.NET Core, and you can connect these to the database. So that is just a simple way of creating APIs, linking it to the database, and we can actually now see how we can query the data, update the information, and even deleting some of the information within our application. So let's just wait and see how our application will be created. So you can see we've just run these commands. So we have very two important commands: add migration, which will generate the migration file, and we have the update database. These will actually generate the. So you can see we have the login failed for user. So that is now the challenge with our connection. So on our connection, we need to specify. So let's just go here. So the issue is now here: server, this one, then database, then we have this. So let's just see. So we are getting this particular error here. You see, logged in failed for user. We don't have, so you can see engineer, this is the database, trust server certificate, then you have multiple active result sets. So I want us to introduce something here. So I want us to introduce another thing to trust. So let's just call it trusted. So call it trusted connection. So if you do that, then give it true, so that our connection will be trusted. So we don't have any user accessing our database. So let's just proceed again and run the command. So I'll just clear. So update database. So if you click update database, it should now trust our connection. So you can see it is generating the commands, and it has actually done. So if you are keen with this particular information, you'll notice that we have the create table. So here you'll actually see that create table courses with ID, not null, identity. So these are actually SQL commands, and it is actually executing them on our behalf. So if we now go to our database, you'll notice that we have some tables. So if I just refresh, you'll notice that we have tables on our application, on our database, I mean. So we have the course and we have the students. So if we just select it, you'll notice we don't have any data now for the students and even for the courses. So you see all these are the fields that you've just added, and we also have the courses table, which also doesn't have any courses. Then you have our EF migration history. This actually tracks all the migrations that we just added. If you are keen, you'll notice that we have the migration name that we provided. So you can see student details is the migration name, and this is the other one that is just before the student details is the timestamp. So we've just added the migrations, and we've actually created our table. So there's one thing that also you need to know, guys. Assuming you are creating your application and you can, or you might want to migrate these changes to the live environment, and maybe you don't have access, or you are not, it is not publicly accessed. So you can actually script the migration. So if you just do script migration, it will generate these migrations in a very good way, in which you can actually take them to the server. If you just say script migration, you'll notice that a migration file will be generated here. So if you just see, we have, let me just scroll this down. So you'll notice that we have these particular commands. So you can actually copy. So you can see create table courses. These are now SQL commands that you can run it on the server if you are not able to access the server. So you can see you're able to run all these, and you can always run it. So what all the commands that has been executed is actually part of these commands that you see here. So you can actually execute them on the server if you are not able to access it publicly. So after we have done that, we now have our tables for students and courses, and we have done our application DB context, and we have also connected our application to the SQL server. And this is the connection string. So you have the server name, the database, trusted connection, and you also have trust server certificate, and you allow multiple active result sets. So since we have all those, I want us now to create our endpoints. So let's just go to controllers, then a new, then just say new item, new scaffolded item. So I want us to scaffold, and we are going to scaffold API controllers with actions. So I'll just click on that. Then if I just click on that, you're going to choose the model that you want to scaffold. So the model class here, we should choose our student model. Then our DB context, we need to choose our application DB context that we just created. Then the name of the controller is the student name. I usually like to have the controller name starting with the model name, then the word controller. So if you just click add, then our controller will be generated with all the endpoints of the students. That is creating a student, updating a student, deleting a student, and even checking if a student exists, and even retrieving the details of a single student. So let's just wait and see how our code will look like. So for those who are watching this channel for the first time and you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing, like our video, and even you can actually comment. And if you feel you need to buy us coffee, you can always use the link down below to appreciate our work. So you can see we have our root API/controller. That is how you will be accessing our application. Then you can see we have these particular endpoints: get students. You can see we have await.context. So this will actually give us all the students' details, and we can put students, we can update some of the information, we can always post, we can create a new student, we can delete a student. So let's create another controller. So I'm going to create another controller for the courses. So the same thing, new scaffolded item, then API controllers with action using entity framework core. Then here, I'll also choose our model class, which is courses. Then this will be our course name. So if I just add, we are going to create another scaffolded item, that is the controller with all those particular endpoints. So then we should now be able to test our API. If you can actually create a course, you can create a student with the courses that we've created through the endpoints. So as you can see, this is it. So we now have our courses. So if we just launch our API, we should be able to see some of these details on our Swagger. And we should now see all the endpoints that our application has. So this is now our API that we are going to use to actually demonstrate some of the things here. So let's just launch our application and see. So if you're new to this channel and you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. So there you go, our API is launching. We now have our student management API. We have the courses. So you can see API, get courses, post courses, get a course ID. By the course ID, you can put, update. Then you have the students, a student endpoint for retrieving all students, for creating, getting a single student record, putting, that is where you update a student detail and you can actually delete. So I want us to remove the weather forecast details. So how do we do that? So let's just go back here and we are going to delete this weather forecast. So let's delete that. So I'm going to delete it because we don't need it now because we have our endpoints, and I'm also going to delete this model because we are not using it. So once we are done with that, let's just launch our API again and see. So let's just launch it. So I want you guys to subscribe to our channel. Click the like button so that you help us reach more of our users, and you can actually share the video. So we notice 90% of you guys are not subscribing and you are watching our videos. So you can see now we have our endpoints. So if you click on get students and you try, you can actually click here and you'll notice that we are not getting any results. So let's try. So you can see our response body is null because we don't have any student record. So let's just create as one of the student record. So what I need to do, we are going to the post method, this one, and we are going to create a simple student. So who is creating this? Let's just do macro. So we can do try. So you can actually use this Swagger to test your API, and we'll also be demonstrating how you can use Postman. So you'll do here macro code, then created on. You can do here, let's just call this, this was also string. So let's just confirm created on was, we put it as string, so that it was a string. So let's just maintain it as it is. 2024, you can say here 004, then 08. Then we have our ID. ID is actually auto-generated, so we are going to leave it that way. Then the course here, we are going to say comp. Then here we'll say computer science, computer. So we'll say computer science. Then you can also say here computer science. So that is our course. So once we have that, we can try to execute. So if we execute, it will actually create our course and return the details. So you can see it has created, and we now have an ID called 1. So if you go to the database and try to execute, check the data from the student courses, you'll notice that we have one course. So you can see we have the ID, comp, computer science, description, created by, and created on. So that is the data. So we can also create another course. Let's say here is so we can call this edu, that is education. So we can call this education arts. So that is one of the course, and we can also say this is education. We can have this as arts. So if we do that and execute, we'll notice that it has created, and we now have ID2. We can also create another one called, we can call this bio. You can say this is biochemistry. You can say biochemistry. You can remove this, and you can also have this as biochemistry. So this is our course. So if we execute, we're also having biochemistry and ID2. So if you go to the database, we'll be having 3 courses now. So you see, you have comp, edu, and bio. So assuming we want to retrieve, so if we go now, that is the posting whereby we are actually creating the course. So if we just remove this, so get courses, this will retrieve now all the courses. So if you try this endpoint and execute, you'll notice that you are getting all the courses. You see, ID, this is the first course, this is the second course, and this is the third course. So we are now able to retrieve all the courses. So the third endpoint is get a course by an ID. So what we need to do is to put in an ID here. So it'll say 1. And if we execute, you'll notice that it is only giving us the ID with the course ID 1. So if we try another one called 2, so this is the 2. And if we execute, we are getting the second ID. You see, this is the second course with ID 2. We can also try 3. So this is 3. And if we execute, you'll notice we have ID 3. And if we try 4, because we know that we don't have a course with ID 4, it will give us an error response status 44. So you'll notice that it is saying that is not found. So we've been able to create now the courses within our application, and you can actually update a course. So if we try here, you'll notice that when you are adding a course, let me just copy this. So if we copy that, go back to our output method. Here we are now updating a course. So if we try here and we say we want to update our course with ID 1, so we'll pass the ID here 1. Then we will say that is, it was comp, so we change this to comp, and we say computer science, and we call this computer science with programming. So we are trying to just update it. So we say computer science with programming. So that is our new course name, and we are going to update it here as well. So if we just put in here these details here, so we're now trying to update our course with ID 1. So if we execute it, you'll notice that it there is something, so it has actually updated. So you can see the code is success. So if we just go to our database and try to check, we should notice that our computer science is now computer science with programming, and this is computer science with programming. So our course has been updated. So, and you can also delete a course. So let's just add another course that we will be deleting. So let's just try this. And so here, I want us to call this test. And if we execute, it will now create another course called ID4. And let's just check. We now have an ID4 course called Testo Chemistry. So let's delete that one. So if we go to the endpoint called delete this one, we only need to pass the ID4, and it will actually delete that particular course. So if we execute, you'll see it has given us status code at 200, and you should actually see that our course is gone now. So if we update, you'll notice that our course is gone. So we've been able to see how those endpoints works. So let's just now try to create a student. So I'm going to create a student here. So I'll just try. So here I'm going to call this macro code, and here we are going to call this 2024 03 2020. This should be 08. So ID here, I'll just call the first name here is James. I'll call this Mwangi. So I'll call Mwangi. Then here I'll say Karanja. So I'll say Karanja. Then a date of birth, you can leave it as it is. Phone number, I'll do 07 14 98 56 57. Address, I'll say here, I'll just call this Nairobi. Then course ID, we need to put the course ID that we've just created. So I'll just do here course 1. So if we just do course 1, then I think that should be okay. So if we try to execute this, so we need to check if all goes well. So if we execute, we'll notice that it has given us ID 1. So that means our student has been created. So if we just go to student, so let's just go to students. So you'll notice that we now have the student details. So we have the first name, the middle name, the last name, email address. Email is actually giving us string, then date of birth, phone number, Nairobi, course ID is 1, and this is the name. So if we go back again to our, so we can actually change, for the email, we need to put it an email. So we can call this, where was it? It was actually here. So you can call this test@gmail.com. So if we try to change the name here, we say this is 1, and here is 1. Execute again. You'll be able to see we now have 2 students here. You see we have 2 students now. and our email now has some information. So let's try to add another student. So this is 2, this is 2 as well. And if we execute, we have 3 students. There we go. Let's add the final student. So here we'll say 3. This is 3, and this is 3. So if we execute again, we'll be able to see we have another student. Let's just see. So you see, we have 4 students. So we've been able to test our API using that is Swagger. So you are able to test your API using this particular section. But also, you can also do the same using Postman. So I have my Postman installed, so I'm going to use Postman. So if I just open Postman, you should now be able to see how you can use Postman to test your APIs. So let me just open Postman, then you'll be able to see how it works. So this is my Postman. You can actually download Postman and you can use it to test your API. So you can see this is my Postman. So this is my Postman. I've just opened it and I can actually click add a new URL. So here on the method, you can see here we have the method. And actually, so let's just test our API using Postman. So I've just opened Postman. As you can see, we have our Postman here. So the first thing is I want us to try with this particular endpoint. So as you can see here, you can actually get the URL here. So you have the localhost API courses. So if I just paste this here, and you can see the method is actually get. So if you can able to see that the method is get, and if you execute here, if you click send, it will actually, so you can see here, you can say disable this validation, and if I disable that, you'll notice that we are now getting the student data. So you can see we have our students data. So these are actually the courses data information. So you have the ID, computer science with the programming, and you can see I'm able to get the courses. If I click send again, you'll notice that it is actually giving us the courses. So the next thing that you can also do is from here, you can also try to get the student data. So if I just go to students, where is it? So the last endpoint. So you see this is the student get endpoint. So if we try it, you'll notice that it is giving us the list of students. You see, we have all these list of students. The same thing you can also do is you can copy this particular endpoint and you can test it on Postman. So if you just do that and ensure it is a get method, so if I just ensure the link also is correct, so if I just send, you'll notice that it is giving me my courses, my student details. So we have the ID, first name, middle name, last name, email address, date of birth, all this information. So that's how you can test your API using Postman. If your API is also authorized or it has a token, you can also click on authorization and you can place here, you can choose bearer token and you can paste your token inside this particular text. Then in case you are trying to do post data, if you just you now choose the method. So you see we have different kind of methods: post, get, put, patch, delete, add, and options. So if you want to post, that means you want to create another student information, you will click on post. So here we don't have any authentication for now. So you ensure that it is changed to no auth. Then if you want to create a new student, so you see we have post, then student endpoint, then we need to supply data that you are going to create. So if you go back to Postman, what you realize is whenever we were creating our student data, so let me just go back to where we were doing that. So on our post endpoint, so you see here, we were posting data in JSON format. So we are actually posting data in JSON format, and this was the data. So if we just copy this data and go back to Postman, you'll notice that there are different options on how you can post the data, and we need it in the body. So you'll just click on the row. Then on row, we need to choose the format that you are posting our data. It is in JSON format. Then you now paste your data here. So if you just check, currently we have how many students? We have 4 students. So on Postman, we are going to post another student. Then you can call this James 4. This is James 4. And this is James 4. Then we have this particular information. Then the course, you can maybe even change the course to be 2. So if we do that, so we now have our student data and we are going to post it. So if you click post, you'll notice that it has created our next student, and you can see the ID is 5, James 4. If you go to the database, we now have a 5th record. So you see, this is the record, James 4, and it has been created from Postman. So you can also do the same thing. We can maybe add another record from Postman. Here, I'll just do 5. This is 5. This is 5. And you can say complete here. Say this is our email address. So I'm going to say here complete. And if we send, you'll notice that our record is created, and you can see the status 201 created. So if you go back here, you'll notice that our new record has been inserted. We have our email address and everything is okay. So that is how you can post data in Postman. You can also do delete. So if you just do delete, but now on delete, you remember on delete, we are actually supplying a record with ID. So let's just check on our Postman. On now, so you see, this is the delete. You need to supply the record with ID. So instead of doing this, passing the data here, you see for the delete, we don't have anybody. So you just click none. Then here, we just pass 5. So this is the ID of the student that we need to delete. So if I just click send, you'll notice that our record should have been deleted. So let's just check. So you see, we are now missing ID 5. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So let's delete the 6th one. So you just pass in the ID here. So you'll say 6. And if you click send, our ID should be deleted, our record should be deleted, and we now have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is how you test your API using Postman. So I want us to try and modify some things on our API. So you can see on our student API, we are able to get the list of students from these particular endpoints. So I want us to add what we usually call versioning in our API. So the next thing that we need to do, let's just stop our API. And the best thing with versioning, in case you change your API, you don't need to destabilize other systems that are actually using your API. So instead of actually manipulating the API as other systems are actually querying your API, you can actually introduce versioning in your APIs so that you don't interrupt others. So what I want us to do is I want us to introduce another NuGet. So we're going to install some NuGets. So let's just do manage NuGet packages. Then here I'll just do API version. So just search API version. Then you are going to install something called, you see, you're going to install something called ASP.NET, that is ASP.versioning MVC APIs. So this is the one we are using to now control the API versioning. So the others are deprecated. As you can see, this package version is deprecated. So don't use a deprecated version. So once we have that, we need now to explore the versioning bit of things. So let's just begin. So once we've added that versioning NuGets, so let's just go to program.cs. Then I want us to add something here on our program.cs class. So I'm going to add some, so here I want us to add builder.services. So I've just added this code. So you see API, so add versioning, then options. options, the default API version. So you can have the default API version. So here you can see it is actually giving the major version and the minor version. So here I'll just do, let's just call this 1. Then we can actually do assume default version number when unspecified, report API version reader. So you actually do that. So the next thing that we need to do is actually to indicate the endpoints and the versions on our API. So as you can see, we've just now added this API, add API versioning. So the next thing, you can actually come to our student controller, and at the top here, you can actually specify the API version. So you can say API version. So you can see, and you can specify, you say this is version 1. You can also do the same thing to our endpoints, our courses controller. You can also do here, this is version 1. So this is just one of the method on how you specify. You actually do API versioning. And also, you can also choose to specify the versioning within our controller. So if we just launch our application, that is our API, you'll notice that now our API is actually versioned. But you can also control, whenever you are calling certain endpoints, you can always try to specify the version that you want to access. So let's just launch our API and you'll be able to see how we can update that. So as our API is launching, if you have not subscribed to our channel, please consider subscribing, like our video, and comment down below. So you can see this is our API, and you can see here it is actually saying version 1. But if you are not keen, you cannot be able to tell. So you can see here Students Management API version 1. But you can also enforce the versioning to our endpoints. So how do we do that? So I want us to enforce the versioning to our endpoints. So let's just control that. So what I want us to enforce, so we say this version is version 1. So if you go to our program.cs class, we need to do here, we'll say this is 0, this is actually version 1. So let's just do version 1. So the next thing is, if we go to our students controller, we can actually specify the version. So you do this. So if you say version is equals to API version / controller, that means every endpoint that will be receiving from external, that is every call, should actually be accompanied by the version of that particular API. So if we just copy this, we can also do the same to our courses. So we need to ensure that every route is actually accompanied by the version. So let's just relaunch our API and see. So as you'll notice, now our API will be having API / version 1, then flash the controller name. So let's just confirm. So as you can see, we now have API / version 1, version, then courses. So whenever you are calling these endpoints, you need now to specify the version. So that means versions could be version 1, 2, 3, depending on how you are updating your API. So if I just try now, you will notice that I cannot execute my request unless I provide the version. So if I just do here version 1, it will now execute and give me the courses details. So you'll notice it has actually provided the courses. And if you see the endpoint, it has now changed to API, then version 1, then courses. So you can now be able to create these APIs with now versioning and ensure that you are providing the correct versions. So instead you want to improve this particular application, you don't need to maybe delete or even modify. You just create another controller, then you specify that is version 2, and you make your changes. Then you now redirect users to point to version 2 instead of altering what they are actually consuming. So you can actually be developing as they are using their your endpoints. So that is one of the things that I wanted us to check. So then another thing is, as you can see on our endpoints, you're able to see that these names are specific to what we had added. So you can always modify how you want to rename the endpoints and ensure that maybe you provide the names that you want. So how do you do that? So to rename, like for example, like get courses, you'll notice that on the get courses endpoint, you'll see this is just saying courses. But you can also rename these particular endpoints and maybe give it the correct name. So you see this is the name API slash courses. But we can change this. So if we just come here, you can actually introduce the root here. So you say root, then here we can give it the name. So here we'll just call this get student courses. So if you do that, you will have actually modified the default name courses to get student courses. So if we relaunch our API, you'll notice that our endpoint is now different. It is saying get student courses. So let's just launch our API. So that's how so it says the root pattern name version appears more than once. So let's just do away with that. So here we can actually can say API, then we can do that. So let's relaunch. So here we should say API slash get courses. So if we relaunch, we've actually now specified the name of our API. But now you can see it is actually giving us API slash then courses, then that is it. But we don't want to be doing that. So if you just remove this, let's just do that. Relaunch our application again. So you can see now we have API version, then courses, then get student courses. So you'll be passing the controller name, then you get student courses. So you can be able to now change the name of the endpoints that you are using. So maybe you want to specify how the endpoints will be coming. You can always specify that. For example, here you can say get course by ID, get student course by ID. So that is how you can rename it. So if we relaunch it, you'll notice that our endpoint changes. So you can actually change the root of the endpoints. So instead of having it default by what we had scaffolded. So as you can see, so there is something. So it's saying get student course here. Yes. So it is actually by. So here we should pass you should actually pass something. So as you can see, that is what should happen. So it should supply the ID. So let's just do that and relaunch. So get student course by ID, and we are expecting an ID. So if we relaunch that, you'll now get our endpoints. So we now need to remove this. So let's just do, this should be get. This is get, and here will be get student course by ID, and we supply the ID. So let's just relaunch. So that's how, if you want to modify your endpoints and give it the names that you want without actually reusing the default endpoints. So you can see now we have API, then version, then courses, then get student course by ID, then you need to supply the ID. And if you test now the endpoint that you have, you see you cannot execute without the version. So if you provide the version and you execute it, then you'll get the same results. So you can see we have our courses. So these are the courses that we've just added. So I think we've just completed some of the small modifications that we've done. So the next thing that I want us to do is now, I want us to host this API on IIS. So how do we deploy the API on IIS? So what I want us to do, the first thing is we need to publish. So I'm going to right click my project, then I'll choose publish. So that's the first thing that you need to do. So if I click publish, it will actually give me an option to where you want to publish. So you can see where are you publishing today. So you can publish this to Azure, Docker Container Registry, to a folder, to FTP or FTPS server, the web server IIS, or import file. So I want us to publish this to a folder. So choose folder, Then you can define the folder that you want to choose, or the folder that you want to publish. So you can actually create a folder on your machine and specify that particular location. So you can browse and locate that particular folder, then you will have your files published there. But for me, I'm going to leave it there. Then if I just click finish, it will actually start publishing. So you can see it has actually defined my target location. So here we'll notice that the target location is being delete existing files. So in case if you want to be deleting existing files as you publish, because you might be reusing that particular folder, you can actually edit and specify that you want to ensure you are actually deleting. So if you edit, there are some important things that now comes to this particular application. So you can see you can publish either in debug or release mode. It's actually advised to be publishing in release mode. Then the target framework is 8. You can deploy on either framework dependent or self-contained. So you can actually research what are these two things on what it means. So I'll give you that as an assignment. So for me, I'm going to deploy as framework dependent. Then target runtime, you can choose either to Windows 64, portable, and the rest. So it depends on the kind of runtime that you are targeting and the environment. So for me, I'm going to use Win64. Then the file publishing options. So you can delete existing files prior to publishing. So in case I want to override, so I'll do that. Then the database connection, you can say use this string. So this is the connection string. So you can always allow it to use that. Then entity framework migrations, so we don't have it. So then I'll just click save. So if you click save, you'll notice that there are some things that changes now. This is delete existing files is now true. Configuration is released. Target framework is .NET 8.0. Then the target runtime is Win64. So once I'm okay with this, I'll be able to see there is a button here called publish. So I'll just click publish. Then you'll notice that there is a progress on this particular area showing that publishing is ongoing. So I'll just leave until it is complete. It has completed publishing. So let's just wait and see. So you'll notice down here, it is actually in progress. So for those who are watching this channel for the first time and you want to subscribe to our channel, please consider subscribing, like our video, and you can always share. So as you can see, our file has been published, our project has been published to the folder that we indicated here. So I'll just open the folder. So if you click open the folder, it will take me to the published files. So you can see these are all the files that has been published. So I want us to copy these particular files. So just copy all that particular files. And before even doing anything, go to local disk C, then go to inetpub. So if you go to inetpub, www-root, then on www-root, I want you to create a folder. Create a folder on www-root and call that particular folder. So I'll just new. I'll call it student API. So if you go to the www-root, then student API, then on that particular folder, go inside and paste all the files that we've just copied. That is the files that we published. So you can see our files has been published and we've now pasted the files on local disk inetpub, www-root, and student API. So the next thing is go to IIS, search IIS on your machine. Then that is Internet Information Services Manager. Then click on it. Then you'll open a screen like this. Then go to, on the left hand side, click on there is an arrow called here, and actually it is the name of your machine. Then if you click on it, you'll be able to see, if you expand on the icon here, you'll be able to see application pools and sites. So if you click on sites, you'll be able to see some sites that are there. So I want us to create a site called student API. So right click on this particular folder here called sites. Then if you add new site, it will give you the option to add a site. So I'm going to call this student API. Then we have something here called physical path. So if you just click on the physical path, you will now go directly to the folder that you've created. So that is local disk then INET-PUB, then www-root, then go to our student API. So this is the folder that we have. So if you just click on that particular folder, you will notice that the root is the same. That is C INET-PUB wroot, then student API. Then you can now choose the port. So for the port, I can say I want port 7071. So there is no reason as to why I've chosen that particular port, but you can always choose the port that it is open. So assuming you are doing this on the server, remember the port must be open for people to access it outside your server. So you need to ensure that this port is open for you to use it. So for me, I'll just use this because it's locally on my machine. So then I can actually connect. So you can connect maybe to a specific user, but for now, we are going to leave it on application user. And you can also test the settings. So you can see it is authorized and it's authenticated. So then I'll just click OK. So if I click OK, you'll notice now we have a site called Student API. So the next thing that I need to do is, if you go to the right hand side, you'll notice that we have browse. If I click browse, our API should launch. So as you can see, this is our API, and you can actually get that this local page can't be found. The reason for this is because if you go to our application, you'll notice under program.cs, we were only accessing Swagger when it is in development mode, which is actually a good thing. So, but in case you want to use it, if you just type in here Swagger, so if we just type in Swagger, you'll notice that it is not giving us that particular thing. So what we need to do, let's just add Swagger. Let's just add Swagger. Whenever we publish our API, we are able to see Swagger. So how do we do that? Just copy this and have it here. But it is actually a good thing to ensure that you are not deploying Swagger to your published API or that is accessible externally. But you can always have it. But for now, it is usually default within, you're able to access it within development environment. So if you want to access it, even if you've published, you can always copy this outside that particular if condition. So we can do the same thing now. You can also publish. So, and you see now, whenever you try to publish, it will actually delete the existing files because of this check that we added. So I'm going to publish. Then it will override the existing files and give us a new files. So that is how you republish. So you can see it is succeeded. We are going to open the folder again, and I'm going to copy these particular files. So if you go to INET-PUB as well, C INET-PUB, then www-root, then we are going to use student API. So if I replace the files, continue. So there we go, it's publishing. So as you can see, so for those who are watching this video for the first time, consider subscribing. So sometimes you can actually get this particular issue when you are deploying. So the best thing is you go to the API under application pools and student API, then you can actually stop it. Or even you can go to the student API and you can stop it. So if you stop it, then it will give you the option to retry and paste all the files. You can see it has actually uploaded our files. Then you can now start your API. So you can restart it and you can always start it. So if you go now to our application and relaunch, then choose have /swagger, you'll notice that now our API is accessible. So you can see our API now hosted on IIS. So if you go back to and click now browse, you'll notice that our API is giving this particular error, but if you do /swagger, then you are able to get our API up and running. So you can see we've hosted our API on IIS and you're able to access it. So that is it for today. I'm going to leave it there. In case you want to access the source code, you can always claim the source code using the link down below. And it will be good to also get your comments and appreciate what we do. So that is it. And if you feel you need to appreciate our work, you can always buy us coffee. A hot one will be really amazing. So we are going to leave it there for today, and we will actually post more videos as we go along. See you in our next video. Bye.